Hello, welcome back. Sean here, Mountains Garage. Happy New Year. It's actually January 2nd, 2025. Yesterday, kind of took it easy. Well, actually I worked cleaning the house. I'd rather be out here in the shop, but sometimes you got to do what you got to do. While that was taking place, last time I worked on the 377 small block project, which is nearing completion, after a long time. I ordered a pair, because it was cheaper that way, of 2-inch plastic spacers to space the carburetor up, with hopes of being able to use this factory style 14-inch air cleaner that has a fresh air connection in the valve cover. The intake I chose to use, the Victor Jr. Elderbrock Victor Jr., is not as high as the other two manifolds, but I know power-wise it holds its own, so it's bolted down now. It's staying. It was just eBay spacer. They come with studs, nuts, flat washers, and 2 gaskets each. And before I tell you what I found problematic with them, it actually has a 5/16 fine thread nut that takes a 1/2-inch wrench. Most of the imported, these are Speedmaster studs. I should know better. Studs fine. The washers are kind of cute. The nuts are like half thickness, which is fine, but they're 12 millimeter. No big deal when you're bolting it here, but when you're out on the side of the road, much easier to find a 1/2-inch wrench, but I guess if you're taking the carburetor off on the side of the road, you're probably going to need more tools anyway. So the problem, I just put this spacer on. I took the short, 1.5-inch spacers off, wound in the big long studs they give you for the 2-inch spacer. They're nice studs. They got a nice shoulder on the bottom where the 5/16 course, where they go into the manifold. They spin right in, hit the shoulder, they stop. Set the gaskets on, gasket, spacer, gasket, carburetor, and the stud isn't long enough to give you half a nut's worth of threads with the flat washer they give you. I like to run a flat washer against the carburetor, a lock washer, and then the nut. And I want to see at least full thread, and that doesn't give me any opportunity to put a throttle linkage bracket or anything else under it. So the studs they give you are too short. So despite they're very long, failure. Once again, cheap imported junk. It's the details. It's always the details. So I'll have to get longer studs to even use the spacer. But it did show me what I wanted to see. If I can find a piece of 7/8 ID oil resistant clampable hose, or even just slide on, non-wire reinforced, it almost lines up. So that part's fine, and I think it looks a lot better, jacked up, if you will. Now, a word on air cleaners, because we're going to go talk about tunnel ram carburetors in a minute. Even though this will be under the hood of something, probably a 56 Chevy wagon, handyman wagon, 2-door wagon, I will not just put an air cleaner on anything. I always think it's going to get wet. So always buy or run the gasket. Holly's good about giving you this gasket in the rebuild kit for a 4150 or 60 series carburetor. Dominator, harder to find. I just bought 2 of them this morning. Blew $20 on 2 air horn gaskets for a 4500, but that's okay. So I'll always run a gasket there. And can't just put it on one way. So she locks right in, right there. I have a collection of nylon washers for drain plugs, etc. I always put a nylon washer on the 1/4-inch stud, or 5/16 if it's a Dominator. And even the wing nut I choose, you won't see the thread sticking up. It'll be solid across the top, maybe knurled, something fancy, even make one. But I won't leave a path for water to get into the engine. My first car was a 70 Chevelle SS396, former drag car, roll cage, ladder bars, Moroso brute strength 488 gears, 396, turbo 400, big stall converter. I'm 15 years old. My parents are very trustworthy, and I didn't really disappoint them too much, even though I did have the fastest car in high school, allegedly. When I got that car, it had the factory cowl induction hood, and somebody at some point had cut a hole in it, and then it had passed it back up. It changed hands a few times after I sold it to my neighbor to buy another 70 Chevy SS 454. Eventually, the car set in the wintertime, and there was a crack in the Bondo, I guess, in the patch on the hood, and somebody had put a velocity stack or one of those open, might have been Wyand even sold that air cleaner too. It was kind of meshed all the way across the top and kind of shallow looking, kind of like the Baldwin Motion cars had on them. It had one of those on it. I didn't put it there. I had a regular air cleaner, but it leaked water down into it, and that car would start instantly. I'd put a dual point Mallory distributor into it. As soon as you hit the key, that thing was running. Probably better than any car I've ever had. I mean, instantaneous. Well, it started instantaneous and bent a connecting rod because one cylinder was full of water. It even made its way into a magazine. I was reading and it said, so-and-so out of Windham, Maine, is 70 Chevelle SS 396, and then I was told the story for real. That was my car, and it bent a rod because water found its way down in. Long story to tell you, just seal the thing up like it's going to get wet. And again, that's why I don't run an open velocity stack. They're cool, but that's not going to stop anything when it comes to water. And sorry if I keep walking out of the picture, although you're probably better off not seeing me all the time. Water's going to find its way in, and it's always going to rain when you least expect it. I've been doing a deep dive into all my ignition stuff. It's spread everywhere. I'm trying to get it all in one spot as much as I can, even though I have 50 sets of plug wires. But I found this. It came in a bunch of junk I bought back in the early days of COVID, where you weren't supposed to even leave the house. I met a guy and made an exchange, in the dark of the moon. It's a brand new Summit CD box with all the wiring and instructions. Probably a good match with my, Mallory distributor I decided to use the other day. And as you remember, this does have a bronze gear in it currently. Probably going to run it that way. Not sure, but before I start it, I'm going to have the distributor out to reprime the oil anyway. And in this engine, the Proform oiler that we used the other day, pre-oiler, worked fine. It was in my last video where I showed you I made another primer to prime the oil system in the 396 engine project. And it worked fine, and I had instant oil to the right side cylinder head where I did not have it before. After I shot the video, later on the holiday break there, I had the engine tilted either way because I wanted to run the primer enough to make sure the rockers were all filled right to the top and running over. And it was making a mess because the exhaust rockers on the big block are very close to the outside edge of the valve cover. So the blue set of, I thought they were Moroso, but they're probably Felpro gaskets. They're a beautiful gasket. They're like a 480E transmission pan gasket, reusable, got metal inserts so you can't over tighten them. The blue set that I had on here originally, 15 years ago, I put them on my 572 while I was pre-oiling, same way, and oil would come out around the studs on the bottom. It would not seal. I had a fabricated valve cover, a tin valve cover, so I put on my Old Faithful used Felpro cork gaskets. They got a rubber or steel center, the cork on either side. They're about a 1/4 inch thick, and they seal anything. I mean, old Moroso tin valve covers, everything. Never had a valve cover leak to speak of. These imported covers, but they seem to be fairly flat. The gasket seems to sit on them really nice. When I bolt the cover on and lay the engine over to put one cylinder head up high, it runs right out of the stud, and I got a puddle on the floor now. Just from sitting here like this even. So that's not going to fly. So either I'm going to try another set of gaskets or these covers will have to go. I don't believe it's a cylinder head. So we have just a incompatibility there. But here, might have caught your eye, I month and a half or so, at least, maybe 2 months ago, the Holly website, Fall Harvest Sale. Holly was having a sale. That was my school bus alarm. I bought a black pair of primary and secondary throttle bodies, 4500 Dominator size. I bought a black primary and secondary and a shiny black primary and secondary. Cheap money. I instantly received, these are both the primaries. All of a sudden I can't talk. This weekend I got confirmation tracking number on the secondaries. 2 days first I got the black one. It's coming from Texas. Monday I got confirmation and tracking on the shipping of the shiny one. The shiny one's coming out of Bowling Green, Kentucky, and it's gonna beat the black one here. So I thought black on this black Sniper tunnel ram would be stunning. I think the shiny looks better. You tell me what you think, but I'm not sure I'm gonna run this manifold. It's definitely shorter. I have a wood spacer, a Moroso laminated wood spacer. Got all kinds of different spacers for Dominators, but I have matching 1/2-inch spacers, so it'll be jacked up a little bit, but it's a relatively inexpensive manifold. Well, what all tunnel rams cost, $600 to $700 or more. I'm not sure I'm in love with it, but it's 4500 flange, so there's no adapters necessary. I'll have to make something for air cleaners. I'm thinking of cutting off the velocity stacks. Well, they're right behind you. We'll go look at them, but you think there's enough meat, I could cut them shorter and they would fit the Dominator sized opening. On the blower, they actually make a plate where I could run the shiny ones or the black ones. Or let's go look at the other tunnel ram and we'll see what we might do over there. Under the lift, try not to bang my head on the frame. But yeah, I believe I could cut these off. I already have them and it would work on this situation. Or I think this longer run of manifold, this is Holly 4150 size. My friend John has a pair of 4150 throttle bodies he wants to sell me. And as soon as I get the money, I'm gonna buy them. That'd be a bolt-on. But in the interim, potentially I already have one of these adapters that I could go from 4150 to 4500. What's another 2 inches? I'm trying to look cartoonish anyway, right? So, and go ahead and use this manifold. The longer runners, I think, will definitely help torque. I know it's been dyno proven 1,000 times. This manifold makes better torque than a dual plane single 4-barrel manifold because it's long. Think about the old Cross Ram 413 Mopar. That thing made a ton of torque because the manifold is 3 feet long. So I'm still thinking about that. I think it'd be, again, with today's technology, I'm going to buy one fuel pump that could do carbureted fuel pressure or EFI, so I can plumb the whole truck. It's right over my head here. And if I want to go back and forth or whatever, all you do is change the regulator, which would be mounted on the manifold anyway. So if I do my lines right and everything, it'd be a pretty simple swap. And yeah, future Sean, but things I'm thinking about. I'll finish up over here at the 440 Dart LS for the Race 55. I was taking the throttle body off the Holly manifold, which is over my shoulder, that I took off. It was just sitting here on the bench. Figured I'd transfer it over into the Hogan manifold, but I was pretty sure, well, you never know till you try. Holly stuck with the metric bolt. You know, LS stuff is all metric until you start getting a dot block and American-made intake manifolds and stuff. They're probably not going to go metric thread. So this is just quarter course. Once I figured it out, it wasn't M6 like a Holly manifold and every other LS manifold kicking around. So fortunately, on this project, the 47 Ford pickup, when I ran the brake line, I told you I was going to get some new button head stainless bolts for the P-clamps that hold the brake line, because on the 3/16 line, I was having trouble using a regular 1/4-inch bolt with a 7/16 head. I bought a box of 100 of them, and it's perfect to hold the throttle body on. So how's that for a tie-in? So that's my randomness today. I've been running around looking. I have the sideways mount tunnel ram throttle linkage. I found it all, and I've been digging for more ignition stuff, and we'll have to cover that in the next video. Disappointment in the MSD world, but we'll make it work. Have a nice night. Talk to you soon.